It's great on paper. Add talent to the quarterback factory, very cost effective. But Gardner Minshew is coming from a place where he wanted to compete with Trevor Lawrence.
Mag guys here on your Birds 365 cut down edition. Eagles cut the rush down to 53. We will have more activity today, or at least John and I believe so. We'll certainly have more activity because the Eagles are going to announce the guys that they've signed to their practice squad. We think it's going to be more than that they will actually claim a player or two. If they claim 3, you're right, John. It is kind of a sign. Yeah, our roster's not good enough. We need to pick up somebody else's flotsam and jetsam and add them to our roster. It's kind of a bad look. So I don't think it's going to be 3. The question is 1 or 2. But we think that's coming down later today. We're hoping to hear from Les Bowen. He hasn't jumped aboard just yet. Was with John yesterday in the asking of questions to both Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. I want to get Les. It's cut.
I'm trying to text Les right now, so I'll keep you updated.
His take on what the Eagles did. We were talking about the quarterback position with Jalen Hurts, Gardner Minshew, little Joe Flacco mixed in there. Across the league, one major quarterback move, which, oh, by the way, I do want to add this one. Jake Luton.
Jake Luton, yeah. Les is coming in 2 minutes, by the way. 2 minutes.
The supposed backup quarterback for Jacksonville was given his walking papers, so they only have C.J. Beathard down there right now to back up Trevor Lawrence. Again, pointing out that Jacksonville said, do we really want these issues with Gardner Minshew here? So just something to keep an eye on, Eagles fans, if you think Howie Roseman's a genius because he landed Gardner Minshew. He is, if there's not an issue in the room, and we don't know there's not going to be an issue in the room. Just something to keep in the back of your mind. But the New England Patriots, that Belichick guy who was here for joint practices, decided to go with the youth. Mac Jones, who you know I was high on, I had him ranked as the 3rd quarterback in the draft. Lawrence 1, Fields 2, Jones 3, Wilson 4. And, of course, the order was Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, and Mac Jones. He's going to get the start in New England. I got to give Belichick credit because not only does he get Cam Newton signed, he gets him signed to a contract that you can absolutely walk away from, which they did, and they're ready to go with Mac Jones. We said this before the draft. He was the most day one ready quarterback in the draft, and New England's going to make him day one ready and put him right in there as their starter. I think the Patriots did the right thing. How about you?
Yeah, I think they did the right thing. Look, I said it with all young quarterbacks, you're going to have some hiccups, but I do think Cam Newton at this point isn't obviously what he once was. And I think ultimately you want to get on that path in modern football as quickly as possible to get that young quarterback. You know, it's going to be your future. So I know people will look at, even if you go back to Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, that's a long time ago. It's a different NFL now. And I think people get young quarterbacks up to speed because the offenses are simplified. They have more college aspects into it. So when you get a young quarterback, you sort of build your offense around him. And I think Josh McDaniels is good enough to do that as a coordinator. And I was pretty impressed by Mac Jones, to be honest, when he was here as well to begin with. So I think it was the right decision. But I also think, and Urban Meyer's already gotten in trouble for this, talking about vaccination status. And Bill Belichick's smart enough to say, no, it had nothing to do with it. It had something to do with it as well. The guy was just out for 5 days. And it's tough to win football games if you're in a game week and your starting quarterback can't practice.
That is an issue, and Cam may very well never play again because of it. If he's going to stand his ground and say, choice is choice. I'm making mine. Well, the league can say choice is ours too, and we're not going to be signing Cam Newton anytime soon. All right, there's a smiling face we needed to add to the Birds 365 3-shot. I guess, should I say now from the Associated Press? We know you're a quasi-free agent. You're a former Inquirer. How would you like to be addressed, Mr. Bowen?
Just Grand Imperial Potentate. I don't care. Whatever you want to say. Yeah, I only work, here and there for the Associated Press. I don't think they really want to claim me.
Oh, that's not true.
They're going to claim you less at some point. Rob Motti's going to claim Les Bowen. But I do want to get your thoughts. Obviously, the initial 53-man cut, I think that's the key word for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not the final cut. Pet peeve of mine. Your thoughts when you looked at it and say, what are the themes here? What stood out for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't see a whole lot of huge surprises. Howie Roseman made a good point yesterday about how heavy they went on the offensive and defensive lines, and that is their philosophy. Everybody that I saw that was predicting the roster, for example, had 4 running backs making the team. Well, they only kept 3, and they only kept 5 wide receivers, even though they had more than that of guys who had performed reasonably well in the preseason and in camp. And it was because they wanted to hang on to all of their offensive and defensive linemen that they liked or that they drafted. And that was something that Howie kind of eluded that I thought was pretty funny, John. They kept that one defensive tackle, the 6th-round pick,
Marlon,
whose last name I can't pronounce.
I have to look at it, and then I can pronounce it. I always have to look at it, Les.
I'm sorry. I wasn't at camp that much, but I did watch the preseason games. That guy was awful.
He did not play well.
They kept him because Howie drafted him. Let's be honest. It's not because they especially wanted to go heavy on the offensive and defensive lines. It's because Howie drafted the guy this year. It's interesting they couldn't even under that flag, they couldn't get Jacoby Stevens on the roster. But
what did Jacoby do? What did he do? Now he got hurt, but they kept every draft pick except Jacoby Stevens, and that was the late round pick that most intrigued me, to be honest.
Yeah,
I thought it was an interesting sort of modern-like pick, trying to get that hybrid player in the back 7. They'll probably get him on the practice squad, so it won't matter. But
yes,
it is interesting that he's the one guy who couldn't make the cut.
Yep. It was they kind of leaned toward youth in decisions. Like Stoll as tight end rather than Richard Rodgers. I still think, given the fact that Tyree Jackson is going to be on IR eventually, I think there's a chance Richard Rodgers could be back after the first game. The one thing the NFLPA really needs to, and they won't have a chance to address it in a CBA for years and years, but one of the biggest loopholes they have is this deal where, I don't know if all fans understand it, if you're a vested veteran and you're on the roster week 1, your salary is guaranteed for the entire season. But if they cut you before week 1 and then bring you back 2 days after the first game, voila, they play you. They owe you like a quarter of your guaranteed salary if they don't keep you all year. So more and more, you're seeing teams say, we can do without so-and-so for a few weeks. And if somebody else picks him up, we'll live. We don't want to pay that $2.5 million that he's owed or whatever, and that's it. You get all these guys cut and people are like, oh my God, they cut so-and-so. Well, they did, but you might very well see him again. And this has become a real, every year there'll be somebody. I don't know if it'll be Richard Rodgers. I think it might be. Could be Jordan Howard. There's Hassan Ridgeway. Somebody like that, and maybe more than one of them is going to be back after week 1. And that's kind of weird. And it's I don't know. If I were a union, I would not want something like that. They keep trying to do stuff to help the bottom tier veterans, and that would help the bottom tier veterans quite a bit.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem with that, Les. What you're saying is correct, but the NFL draws the line when it comes to money. And that is a money-saving move, that you don't have to guarantee the contract if you wait to re-sign till after week number 2. NFL will always move on less work, less time, but when it comes to keeping dollars in their pockets, maximizing the bottom line, they always hold the line when it comes to collective bargaining on stuff like that.
That's true. You very good point, Jody. Yes.
Les, I think we have to talk about the quarterback situation, because you've been around this team for a long time. They just went through this, sort of taking this vacuum approach where, okay, we have Carson Wentz, let's draft Jalen Hurts, let's get a cost-effective backup. It blows up on them. Now, a little bit different this time. You have Jalen Hurts. You bring in Gardner Minshew late, who, by the way, is more proven than Jalen Hurts. Nick Sirianni spoke very glowingly about him yesterday, talking about playing him twice a year, saying he was 19 of 20 against him. Are they going down the same path with this, not realizing it's great on paper, add talent to the quarterback factory, very cost effective, but Gardner Minshew is coming from a place where he wanted to compete with Trevor Lawrence? Is he going to be the type of guy who's just going to stand in line and say, oh, okay, I'll be behind Jalen Hurts?
That's really interesting, John. I don't know. I don't know anything about him other than what I've read. That is a flaw of their thinking about the quarterback factory. That's not the way quarterbacks work. It's not the way goalies work. It's not the way, ace pitchers work. I mean, you don't have, interchangeable or anything like that. That's, you have to have a 1 and a 2 and a 3. And even, you remember when Joe Flacco signed here back in March, and all the crap about he was going to compete. He was here to compete. He didn't even want to talk about, nurturing Jalen Hurts and blah, blah, blah. And, I mean, other than Josh McCown, they haven't acquired a lot of quarterbacks over the last several years who understood, they were here to be backups and really embraced that role. And Josh McCown was 140 years old when he got hurt when he finally had to play, But the one thing that struck me yesterday, maybe it was a reaction to the Minshew trade, but when Nick Sirianni, named Jalen Hurts as the starting quarterback, he really spoke, I thought, very much from the heart. He didn't just say, oh, yeah, it's going to be Jalen. He went on and on about what Jalen had shown him during this camp and so forth. And I felt like it was a pretty strong endorsement, more than I expected, frankly, given their stance up to this point. So I don't know how Minshew feels. And I'd love to know how Flacco feels right now, because he's clearly number 3 out of that group. But I don't think Hurts is going to feel unsettled by this, at least from a Sirianni standpoint.
All right, Les, want to get your take on now that, well, I guess we still have however many practices the Eagles have between now and next Sunday to add into the mix, but no one's going to get a look at it other than the coaching staff, because they've shut down availability to guys like you and John. So we have to take their word on it that they look great in practice. The Eagles had a specific way of doing things. Nick Sirianni, the coach, of how much he was going to put into judging talent in the preseason. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson's going to be there right now. We all know that. That's fine. They went light on Lane. He didn't play much, didn't get many snaps. A couple guys filled that bill. But other positions and other guys didn't play as much as you usually think during preseason. I know we all have to mentally adjust because it was only 3 games rather than 4, but it seemed to me like the Eagles did a little less than we've seen the Doug Peterson Eagles, or certainly going back to the Chip Kelly, Randy Reed Eagles, of getting reps on the field, getting ready for game number 1. We're going to judge Nick Sirianni on that come game 1 against the Falcons. Do you think they'll be better for it because they're relatively healthy? You certainly do that. You don't put your guy in harm's way. He's not going to get hurt. but are they going to be up to speed? Are they going to have the wherewithal to play all 60 minutes? How much stock are you putting into judging the Eagles and what they do week 1 against Atlanta?
That's a good question, Jody. I don't think they'll be all that sharp. The point was to be relatively healthy, and they did do that. I don't think you get, everybody's all about the joint practices now, and they did those with 2 different teams. And that's kind of the way of the NFL these days, and we'll see how sharp it gets you. I don't know. You mentioned Andy Reid. He's still very much, you saw Mahomes out there in the preseason game. Andy thinks you need to do what you need to do to get ready, and you can't just sit and watch and go out there on week 1. Peterson really, though, had the same concept as Sirianni. They did not have a preseason last year, of any sort. But before that, Doug, in 2019, we hardly saw the starters. I don't think we saw Wentz at all in 2019. This is the way the league's going. That's the new thinking. There are things about it I could, I do think having your offensive line together and getting them reps in a really competitive situation is useful. And I think having a quarterback perform against a real rush is useful. And I'm not sure these joint practice, okay, somebody touched the quarterback and he's down. I don't know that that's the same thing. Maybe it is. I do know 17-game season, you're just not going to have, guys killing each other in preseason. That they might not be that great in week 1, but I don't think week 1 is going to define a 17-game season.
It is interesting, though, Les, when you talk about guys, as Jody mentioned, Lane Johnson, the Jason Kelce's of the world, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. I do think there's room for a sliding scale. Those guys, we know those guys. We know they've proven themselves. I don't think they need a ton of preseason reps. On the other hand, we get to the Jets game, and Jalen Hurts is a second-year starting quarterback with 4 career starts. It wasn't their fault. He got sick before the Patriots game, but nonetheless, the end game is he's got 10 live reps. Devontae Smith, who was injured for a lot of camp, is in street clothes with Lane and Fletcher, not even dressed, not even warming up. Is there a comfortable middle there? Should it be one way? Okay, let's just get everybody healthy, or especially the younger players, we got to get them up to speed. Do you think there's a better sort of middle space?
Yeah, I think there is. And that's you sketched it out very well. For instance, Hurts plays a series in that game. Does that really, if he suffers a catastrophic injury, that's horrible, but what are the chances really of that in one series against the Jets? Or Devontae Smith, a couple series against the Jets, if he's that fragile, then they made a horrible mistake in drafting him.
Yeah.
I do think these people needed work, and I would like to have seen some units play together, like the linebackers or the defensive line that's really going to start the season, or the offensive line, as I mentioned. Even though individual veterans, we do know, what they have. I just feel these units need cohesion and some sense of what everybody else around them is doing, and you don't get that in this kind of preparation, I don't think.
All right, Les, you get one of my faves. What do you got coming here, McMullen, if I'm saying it's one of my faves?
Hypothetical question
coming your way, Les Bowen. I'm going to give you a stat line, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Week 1, NFL, Philadelphia Eagles receiver, 7 catches, 111 yards, plus a touchdown. And I'm not talking about Devonta Smith. I'm talking about Zach Ertz. Ertz gets 7 catches, 111 yards, and a touchdown. More likely or less likely he's traded the next week?
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were going with that.
That's why I do it that way. Is to keep you guessing less.
That's an interesting question, Jody. I don't know. It almost seems like would that increase his value that much that they would be able to make a deal? I guess it depends on the tight end situations around the league. My sense right now is he's just going to play this season, and he might end up being their leading receiver again because he had a heck of a good camp. His head's on straight this year. There's he's not sulking over anything. He's not disappointed. He knows his situation. He's got to have a great year to get what he wants in free agency. I don't know. I don't know week one. I mean, the trade deadline will be interesting when it comes to him, but we'll have to see what this offense can really do and how much they actually need him. I mean, it's just not proven that they're going to have a really productive offense without Zach Ertz yet. That's one thing I keep coming back to. But I don't see a trade after week one. Maybe in October, but I don't
maybe
see
at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zach, by the way, Monday. Yeah. What day are we? Monday. He's wearing the shorts the right way. I think he's come to grips. He's going to be a Philadelphia Eagles. So I agree with Les there. I want to shift gears, Les, to something that isn't sexy, but Jody and I were talking about it at least a little bit early in the show. You were here, obviously, through the Chip Kelly regime when Dave Bipp first got here, and you know how good this special teams unit was when they had the Chris Maragoses of the world and the Brian Bremans and the Najee Goods. It always seemed like they earmarked one or two players for special teams. They don't seem to do that anymore. Rudy Ford was great at it, and people in Jacksonville are raving about him. Craig James was great at it, but they're injury-prone guys. They weren't on the field much. Craig James got cut. Poor Michael Clay just turned 30, youngest coordinator in the NFL. And, oh, by the way, Les, they barely practice special teams, at least when we're out there. They are only out there for 90 minutes, 70 minutes. They give Michael Clay 10, 15 minutes. Is this feasible? Are the Eagles making a mistake? Coaches pay a lot of lip service to special teams and then spend a lot of time preparing. Is that a concern for you?
I hadn't really thought that much about it until you brought it up, but you're certainly right. The teams that have good special teams, sure, it's because the coach is pretty good, but it's how much resources you put into it. It's how many players you give the guy. One of my first years maybe my first year covering the Eagles, I remember very vividly, special teams coverage got off to a horrible start. And John Harbaugh was the special teams coach. And he was basically he forced Andy Reid to get rid of Quentin Caver, who was a second-round pick from a few years before, who just couldn't do anything. It was a horrible pick. He couldn't play special teams. Got rid of Quentin Caver. The Cowboys were trying to get Keith Adams onto their practice squad, and the Eagles snatched up Keith Adams, whose nickname was Bullet because he was a little guy with no neck, who became like Jeremiah Trotter's protege. But Keith Adams transformed the coverage. Just that one change, Quentin Caver to Keith Adams, and all of a sudden they were covering kicks, and that you need that sense. You need that guy here and there. You need two or three of those guys to really get it done. And maybe they think they have that in young players. I don't know. I would like to think about that some more, but you're right. It has not been a big area of emphasis that we can see thus far, and it certainly is important.
All right, Les, I want to jump back into one of the areas that the Eagles should have tight focus on, and that's defense. Jonathan Gannon, new defensive coordinator, has impressed most people, certainly as my partner. Johnny Mack has been impressed by him and thinks he's a guy who's on the fast track to becoming an NFL head coach. His philosophy has been stated well, and the hits fly and everything else. They cut down the rosters, let it right down the middle. 53 guys. You take the 3 specialists aside, you got 50 left. 25 defensive players, 25 offensive players. Did they give Jonathan Gannon enough bullets to have a top 10 defense in the NFL this year? Practice, it seemed like it. However much emphasis you want to put on joint practices, their defense was really pretty good against both the Patriots and the Jets. Maybe not so much the third stringers in the preseason games themselves, but when their starters were out there, they stopped other teams. How good a defense is it going to be for Jonathan Gannon this year?
Well, I think a lot, Jody, depends on is Rodney McLeod really ready? Is he going to be close to ready when the season starts? I don't think they're that good at safety without him. It's some other situations like that. I mean, I up front with the starters, they're bulletproof, I think. But again, when you get into the subs, I don't think they're very good. The linebacking, we don't have any idea yet. It's a different group. It's a different setup than they've had before. I'll have to see that to really have any idea. I think at corner, they're a lot better than they were last year. I think top 10 is ambitious, but sure, it's possible if everybody's healthy, if the right people are healthy all year long. I do like some of the things he's done, and I think he is, just listening to him, a very smart, astute guy. And, if they have a meteoric rise defensively, they might have trouble holding on to him.
Yeah.
Somebody might want him as a head coach, even though the league trends more and more offense. A guy that engineers a quick turnaround and is well-spoken and, impressive is going to get some feelers, certainly.
All right, last one from me, Les. I want to talk to you about the 2 lightning rods, probably from the fan base on this initial 53-man roster. Andre Dillard, obviously, first-round pick, 2019, loses the job to Jordan Mailata, and then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, second-round pick, who hasn't done anything in 2 years, but to be honest, outplayed Travis Fulgham in training camp, outplayed John Hightower in training camp. So from that perspective, probably deserves to be here. Your thoughts on those 2 particular players?
Yeah, I wasn't real surprised that either of them made the roster, especially not Dillard. I mean, Dillard really hasn't he's been hurt a good bit. He was hurt all last year. He was hurt during training camp this year. I think throwing away a first-round pick that quick, who hasn't really, gone out and disgraced himself over and over again, would be unusual in the NFL. It really would. Now, whether they're ever going to get anything really out of Andre Dillard is another question, but I'm not surprised that he's here. I think he has great ability. He just, it's a question of his personality and his fire and his physicality, his willingness to play a physical style. With Arcega-Whiteside, I don't know. I think he's an enthusiastic team first guy, which is what you want in your 5th receiver. I don't really, because we haven't been in a locker room since 2019, Travis Fulgham is really an enigma to me. I kind of sense, Mike Sealski from the Inquirer wrote a column last year when Fulgham dropped off after that incredible stretch, noting some things that his college coach at Old Dominion had said about Travis Fulgham. And he was kind of like that in college. He didn't, at Old Dominion, you think a guy with that kind of talent, like the best player on the field every week. He wasn't. Interesting guy, comes from his parents are diplomats. He grew up all over the world, didn't play a lot of football. I don't know that he's that kind of guy as the 4th or 5th receiver, that gung-ho, let's go play special teams. Let's, see if we get 2 snaps. Let's, kill those 2 snaps. I think that's part of the equation there. John Hightower, to me, disappeared this summer. I don't know what happened to him, but Arcega-Whiteside, high pick, right kind of attitude, fifth receiver. Doesn't bother me for him to be the fifth receiver. The problem is he was drafted in the second round. But yeah, they're both still here. Whether we'll ever get anything out of them, I can't tell you. New coach, who knows? It could work out for either one of them still.
All right, last one for me, Les, will be getting on the record. And we certainly give you the ability to change your mind between now and next Sunday. I don't know if you're going to do a specific prediction piece for AP. I know you'll put something up on Twitter at Les Bowen before the season starts. John and I are both on record, despite the stream here who think that we just beat up the Eagles on a day-in, day-out basis and we're two negative old guys. Yeah. Both John and I think they can win 8 games, at least right now. I may get to 9 next week. I could fall back to 7. I doubt highly I'm going to move more than 1 game one way or the other. How many games do you think you're going to win? And yes, everyone should cut Les. We're not going to hold you to this. Les Bowen said 14 wins for the Eagles. Now, if you want to change your mind afterwards, feel free. But as of today, how many games do you think the Eagles win this upcoming year, Les?
Boy, I was just going to go right where you were there. I'm thinking 8 and 9 right now. I don't see there are people talking about 3 wins, and I don't see that at all.
I don't see it.
I'd be amazed. I mean, everybody would have to get hurt again, basically, for that to happen. They'd have to be playing Joe Flacco and Brett Toth and and JJ Arcega-Whiteside for that to happen. I think they're better than that. Are they good enough to win like 12 games? Probably not. I mean, almost certainly not. But we don't know about the division. Some people think Washington's going to be really good. If Washington is really, really good, that has a big impact. You play them twice. Obviously, any team in your division that really breaks out, that suddenly has an impact on your total. But I don't see any reason why they can't be 7, 8, 9 wins. Right now, their schedule outside the division isn't horrendous. They were 4-11-1 last year because a lot of people got hurt and the wheels fell off for Carson Wentz. It wasn't that they had no talent whatsoever on the roster, So yeah, I'm right there with you guys.
Les, we like it whenever you're here with us. We appreciate you coming on today. We'll tap into you plenty during the season. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks, Les.
Les Bowen doing work these days for the Associated Press. Only been following the Eagles for decades. All right, so it's, I guess, the Graybeards, John. You, me, and Les.
Yeah. By the way, you're right. Everybody calls me negative, yet I pick the Eagles to win more games than they do.
Right. How many media members are in town on record with the ability to switch? We'll both next Friday on the show. We'll put our numbers in stone on how many games we think the Eagles are going to win. But you and I have been on an 8 and 9 mark basically since we started 365. After the draft was over, free agency, at least 2.5 months have we been on when they released the schedules when we got to 8 and 9. And we haven't moved. But somehow we're negative Nellies. I don't get it. Yeah, I'm good with 8 and 9 right now.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good right in that wheelhouse, 8 and 9, 9 and 8. That's where I think they're going to be. It's objectivity, Jody. People don't like objectivity. Yeah. They want to be blown smoke up there. You know what? But then they want to say, "Oh, so and so's great. So and so's great. So and so's great. So and so's great." But they're going to win 6 games. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so somebody's got to call it the way they see it. And if it's the Mac and Mac guys, so be it. John McMullen, Jody McDonald coming right back. We'll put a bow on the show here on Birds 3.